Hello, and welcome to Speaking of Supply Chain, where we explore trends, current events, and innovations impacting the logistics and supply chain industries. I am your host, Ellen Wood. Today, I wanted to share with our listeners some musings that I've had over the last few weeks with regard to sustainability and the circular supply chain. Normally, we would do an icebreaker right about now, which if you follow our podcast content on YouTube, you get to see and hear some additional information about myself, about our guests. If that sounds intriguing, you should click on the link in the episode description to go check out our podcast channel on YouTube. But since it's relevant to our topic today, I am going to share a little bit more about how this particular topic is personal for me. In a previous episode, I shared about my dad's work in food production and my tumultuous relationship with mushrooms. But before that company, he had worked in a local meat processing plant. In Indiana, that means pork products. So to say that it was an unpleasant job would be an understatement. But one thing he used to joke about was the phrase that the company leadership would use internally about their processing. And that phrase was everything but the squeal. It's dark. I know. I'm sorry. But if you think about it, it speaks to their larger purpose in that they strove to use every single part of the animal and have zero waste, which is one of the goals of sustainability and circular supply chain. So these are not entirely new concepts. Ever since hearing that phrase, initiatives that are designed to reuse items or byproducts that would otherwise go to waste has been a fascination of mine. We've also spoken previously on the podcast about governmental regulations being necessary to encourage sustainable practices, reduce waste, level playing fields for businesses. But those are really more top-down approaches. What I love to hear about are the innovations from producers or consumers that ensure that their investments of time and effort and capital are as close to zero as possible, even after a product has been sold or used for its intended purpose. So what does that have to do with today? And what this has really sparked for me is the recent eclipse that we had in Indiana. The eclipse had totality. So we got to see the full 100% eclipse. It was very, very cool. My kids really enjoyed it. Our communities got together and had events for it. It was a big deal. And we had, tons of visitors coming into our communities to witness this event. And what it generated was all those single-use safety glasses to be able to look at the sun during the different phases of the eclipse. But those single-use products don't have to be. They don't really serve another purpose. They are only good for viewing an eclipse. And then I heard on the radio the other day about local officials collecting those used single-use safety eclipse glasses to forward on and be redistributed by groups like Eclipse Glasses USA or Astronomers Without Borders, and reused in the next communities that are expecting a full solar eclipse. There's one that's going to be happening in Latin America and South America in August. And so they are collecting those glasses to be able to send them down to those communities. There's in every community, there are individuals in lower socioeconomic situations. And so we want those schools, we want those communities to be able to have access to these safety materials so that they can enjoy the eclipse when it comes to their neighborhood. So it's a small thing on its own, but it speaks to a much larger question of what products in our lives that would normally be considered trash or destined for a landfill could possibly and purposefully be reused. So there's some creative ideas out there, and it's beyond just donating old things into secondhand stores or, to be sold and have a second life, or even beyond donating things such as old eyeglasses or cell phones. There are programs for those so that they can be given to, other individuals who may not have the privilege of being able to purchase these items new for themselves. And although those are great programs and important to have, and they do keep very specialized items out of the trash, those are great programs. But there are other things out there where items are really repurposed. Have you heard about Wands for Wildlife? This is an interesting one that I heard about a few years ago. The program was born from a grassroots initiative to collect used mascara wands from cosmetics. These wands proved to be very useful and sought after by wildlife rehabbers. So when they needed to carefully and gently clean wildlife that had been, injured or abandoned, they would use these mascara wands that had been cleaned and repurposed for this use. And since then, Wands for Wildlife has gone global in their efforts to collect and reuse various items, not just mascara wands, enabling individual wildlife rehabbers and community groups to participate in conservation efforts to help the environment and to help the wildlife. So I love that they saw a need of, this is an item that goes in the trash. Who could use this item, and developed an entire plan for collecting those items and repurposing them and getting them into the hands of the individuals who needed them. And that all takes a ton of logistics. Recycled plastics or reusing plastics is another area and another huge industry. It's a complicated one because not all plastics are created equal. The materials can break down further each time they're reused, limiting their useful life for every reincarnation. But certain plastics can be repurposed into building materials. It can be created or melted down, and you can make 3D printing spools so that you can make new things out of that plastic. They make textiles out of recycled plastic. They make furniture, and it's even used to pave roads, being an additive in the asphalt. The team at Repurpose, they're working hard toward changing the way the world uses plastic by, and I'm going to quote from their website, bringing together brands, consumers, innovators, and policymakers to combat the plastic waste crisis. And their projects have recovered an astounding, this is a big number, 54,276,351 pounds of plastic bound for landfills. That is significant. Whether you're an individual wanting to become more involved or an enterprise business looking to measure your organization's plastic footprint or increase circularity or set reduction goals for your plastic use, this group at Repurpose has resources to support those efforts. Another organization doing something similar is Brightmark, and this is in North America. It's an organization that helps to increase the circularity of materials, but not just plastic. They also repurpose food waste and agricultural waste that they're able to use and generate renewable energy. They create compost out of the solids and fertilizers out of both the liquids and the solids. One fun fact from their website, did you know that the US alone generates over 54 million tons of food waste annually? And globally, food waste accounts for nearly 8% of the greenhouse gas emissions. Those are two of the facts that I found on the Brightmark website. They're trademarked circularity centers, and that's what they the name that they have for their centers, where they repurpose all of these materials. Their circularity centers deploy circular solutions for some of the world's most pressing waste challenges, unlocking the value in waste by transforming it into new products. What's interesting to me is the sheer volume of logistics that are needed to pull off any of these initiatives, whether the massive effort of collecting the materials or processing them either for reuse in their current format, or into new usable formats, distributing that final product, which in truth could end up right back in their raw material pile in a year's time. These initiatives, and I see videos on LinkedIn all the time. I see, articles about these companies that come across my desk. And it's so interesting to me that this is not a new concept, the circular supply chain. And I know that there are so many other organizations doing these types of things. I hope to get one of them or many of them on the podcast so we can talk to them a little bit more in depth about what it is that they're doing to make sure that this waste is not just put into a landfill, whether it's waste that is post-consumer, so it's an item that's been used by the consumer and then it's brought back into some sort of production or useful life, or whether it's simply waste from the production process. That, back to my dad's company's saying, everything but the squeal, so that there's nothing wasted in the production process. We don't want to leave a potential useful item to be left and put into the trash. So that brings us to the end of this very short episode. And while this circular supply chain can be a great goal, it's a fantastic goal for organizations large or small. It requires creative thinking. And I am so interested in those innovations, that coordination of effort from multiple stakeholders. And at the bottom of this is, at the core of this is the basic desire to leave our spaces on this planet in just as good, if not better condition than we found ourselves in. I'd love to hear about what reuse and recycle initiatives you've seen recently, whether it's on LinkedIn or YouTube or in the news. I'd love to keep this conversation going on LinkedIn. So if you have an idea or if you've seen something recently, keep an eye out for my post on Earth Day next week, and let's keep this conversation going. If you have a suggestion for a topic or you would like to be a guest on the show, I would love to hear from you. Please contact me at podcast@mebach.com and we will get that scheduled. As always, thank you for listening to Speaking of Supply Chain. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on whatever podcast platform you prefer. We are on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, or Spotify, and be sure to tune in next time.